You're listening to the Dibbly Dobbly Podcast. Remember to like, share, comment, subscribe, and click the bell to make sure you get the latest episodes of the podcast. Be sure to like and share our Facebook page and follow us on Twitter. So moving on to our next topic, Daryl, there may be some up-and-coming umpires watching this discussion and may be unsure about how to go about certain things within umpiring. So for our next for our next topic, I should say, of this discussion, let's talk about the fundamentals of umpiring and give some tips and advice to any umpire who may be struggling and needs some guidance. So let's talk about preparation, Daryl. It's very important to prepare as an umpire. We've got to prepare in everything in life. As a player, as an umpire, you need to prepare before a game or a series, making sure you read the laws and the playing conditions for whatever series or competition you are umpiring. Speaking to your partner the night before, who you may be umpiring the game with, talking about laws and playing conditions, sharing information on players, teams, conditions, grounds. And Daryl, I came across a document which you did for the ICC in preparation for a World Cup match in 2011 in Chittagong. And you talked about how you prepared, you were working with, preparing with the ground staff, getting the certain, getting the balls ready because there was a bit of dew that was going to come during the game, and the ground staff were ready with mops and ropes to in the second innings for the dew, obviously, to when it came in. You were talking about your exchanges with Graham Swan in that game because it was England versus Bangladesh in Chittagong. Yes. And you were talking about your exchanges with Graham Swan. He was saying, I can't bowl with this ball. You said, well, give it to someone else who can. And you were talking about how we planned to change the ball after 21 and 30 overs due to the soapy nature of the outfield and that, talking about that and preparing for that. So, Daryl, how important was it to do that preparation in that World Cup match? And how did you go preparing before games or a series during your time as an international umpire? And what advice would you give on any up-and-coming umpire on preparation?
Well, there's a couple of different aspects to it. I mean, if it's an international match and you've got a partner, you've generally umpired with them before, you're always spending time in the days leading up to the game talking about all the different aspects and trying to cover all the possibilities that could happen. I think in that case in Bangladesh, in Chittagong in 2011, I have a hunch that might have been the very first one-day international that had ever been played in Chittagong as a day-nighter. I think they'd played on that ground. Well, I know they'd played on that ground many times before, but a day-nighter was a different proposition because at the change of innings, it was almost as if someone had come out and hosed down the ground. The dew factor was just enormous. And we were alerted to that by the ground staff. They told us what to expect. We did have a lot of balls available. In those days, I believe we had a mandatory change of ball after 35 overs, 35 overs.
That's correct, yeah.
But on this occasion, in Chittagong, we knew that the ball was going to be out of condition much earlier than that. So I was umpiring with Rod Tucker, and I seem to recall that Graham Swan was bowling the 7th over of a 50-over match when he complained.
It was the 8th over, actually.
The 8th over? Okay.
Yeah, 8th over, yeah.
I knew it was pretty early, single digit. So I suppose I took the hard line. I could imagine that if I changed the ball in the 8th over, I'd be changing it again in the 10th, the 12th, the 15th, and so on. We'd run out of balls. There wouldn't be enough balls around. No, we had to be fair to both teams. You have to deal with the conditions that you're confronted with. There was a reason why Bangladesh won the toss and fielded, because they knew there would be a dew. And I'm sure, without checking any records, they probably just had the mandatory ball change after 34, 35 overs. And I think they bowled England out for 225-ish, somewhere around about that mark. And when England came out, and it was quickly obvious that the ball was going to be wet very quickly and become soapy. That's the time that it's very hard to grip. But I couldn't envisage changing the ball after 8 overs. After it had been used for 7, at the start of the 8th over. It just wasn't going to happen. So, I remember Graham being quite irate about the fact that I wouldn't automatically change it because he wanted it. We did exchange a few words. I thought it was a reasonable answer when he told me that he couldn't bowl with that effing ball. I just suggested he give it to someone that could. It seemed straightforward to me. That's basically leads me on to the other question you asked about preparation for an umpire. I think an umpire should always ensure that he is his natural self. If you have a sense of humour and that works for you, then you use it. Dealing with people, it's the same in any walk of life, in business, in education, walking up and down the street. I mean, if you're a people person, then you use those skills. If you're not, you don't. So my main piece of advice to any up and coming umpire would be to be themselves. Don't try and impersonate another umpire. Don't try and copy someone else's style or mannerisms. Be natural. Be yourself, and that's something that I always try to ensure. And I think that's got me through a lot of very difficult situations over a long cricket career of over 830 games of cricket. So, be natural, be relaxed. And when someone gets upset, like Graham Swan did, don't get upset as well. It doesn't help the situation if two people are aggressive. Just try and be a calm or a calming influence on the situation. And because, those moments will occur in your cricket career. There'll be times when people aren't happy with you, whether it be the captain, the batsman, the bowler, fieldsman. You've just got to deal with it in a professional and calm manner, if you can.
That's right. The important message here, just be yourself, just be natural and just have fun, really enjoy the job.
It's a job, but it's the best job in the world.
It is. So routines are very important for umpires, Daryl. You've got to have a good routine, or rituals, as we call them. Every umpire has a different routine that they follow pre-game, during the game, and post-game. There's no set routine that each umpire follows. Routines come in different shapes and forms. Daryl, how important is it as an umpire to have a good routine, and what was your routine when you umpired?
What was my routine? Well, I mean, routine, you have so many different routines in a day. You can't nominate them. Let's just pick one. One would be counting the balls in the over. Every umpire's out there with a counter of some type. David Shepherd used to have little toy beer barrels. I think they were Watney's beer barrels, about the size of a 10-cent coin, 20-cent coin, something of that nature. Other umpires I've seen have 6 stones in their hand, and they transfer one stone across to the other hand, or he would put his little beer barrel across and pop it in his pocket. But you need to set yourself up with a routine, and often it's decided or determined very early in your career because it's what you just do instinctively on the first game. When do you count the delivery? Do you count the delivery as the bowler's about to deliver the ball? After he's delivered the ball? When the ball's dead? When? And every umpire would have their own mannerism or a way of doing it. I'm thinking back to when I was umpiring, I would actually be pressing my counter as the bowler was in his delivery stride. And if he delivered a no ball, then of course I'd have to recalculate. I'd have to go back, depending on the type of counter I had, and get it accurate again. If it was a wide or a no ball, it would take a bit of checking. And you've always got your partner out at square leg. Generally speaking, most will signal to you, not just necessarily with 2 to go. Some umpires will signal when there's 3 to go. Some umpires will signal immediately after an extra delivery. For example, if there's been a no ball or a wide and you've just given 2 to go before that delivery, there's obviously still another 2 to go. So the umpire will look at each other again and give the 2 to go signal. They'll repeat that because there's still 2 to go. So whatever ritual or habit you come up with, it's a matter of maintaining it and letting it become second nature. And as a result, you'll have very, very few slip-ups. I'm not saying you'll be perfect because none of us have been, I don't know of an umpire that's ever umpired who hasn't miscounted at some stage or another. It will happen. It's a game played by humans, umpired by humans. There will be errors involved. We accept that. We just like to try and keep them to a minimum.
Absolutely. Focus and concentration's a big thing, Daryl. Concentrating for long periods of time are very important for an umpire, and you have to master that. Just like the players, umpires need good focus and concentration during a game. We cannot fully focus for long periods of time, like in a test match. You can't concentrate for 6 hours straight. Just doesn't happen that way. So you need to find ways and strategies to switch on, switch off, or switch up, or switch down in between balls, just to relax your mind and reset and refocus for the next delivery. So Daryl, during your international career, you have umpired in some games where big crowds were involved and lots of noise and distractions. So Daryl, what was your method in dealing with all those distractions, and what advice would you give to any up-and-coming umpire on how to improve their focus and concentration?
Well, first of all, you don't need to concentrate for very long at all. You know, in a day's play with, let's say, 90 overs, when you're at the bowler's end for 45 overs, what's that, 270 deliveries? It's not a huge amount, but you're not focused all the time. You're not concentrating all the time. When the ball becomes dead, you go into a different mode. You're not stressed. You might be watching the ball go back, relayed through the fielder back. You don't see it necessarily go back to the bowler because he's behind you, but you sense when he's about to start his run up, and that's when you start to switch your focus back on. So you're only really focusing for 4 or 5 seconds at a time, 270 times a day at the bowler's end. It doesn't amount to a huge amount, but what you've got to do is you've got to ensure that when you do switch on, you switch on fully and you don't let anything distract you. Because if you're in partway through a conversation and a ball's bowled, it can be distracting if you've got your mind somewhere else, or you're thinking about home, or you're thinking about the kids, or you're thinking about, what your friends are up to, or you're thinking about those people over in the crowd enjoying watching and having a beer and you're not. It's all a matter of just focusing for a small period of time, get it right, then relax. You might have a word to the non-striker. You might speak to the bowler as he walks past. You might tell him that he's very close to the front of the popping crease. You might be having a conversation about someone's private life. You might be talking about one of his teammates. Gautam Gambhir for India used to come down to the bowler's end and ask me about his batting technique. Did I get my front foot across far enough, Daryl? Where was that pitch, Daryl? Did I have that one covered, Daryl? Yes, Gautam. Yes, Gautam. You're looking good. Keep it up. So there are a lot of things that can distract you, but it's all a matter of turning those off and focusing for 4 or 5 seconds until the action's finished.
Absolutely. Training is very important for umpires as well, Daryl. Going down to the nets, it's where you fine-tune your processes, methods, routines, technique, working on different skills, building rapport with the players. And you've certainly done that over your time as an international umpire, Daryl, going down to the nets, building rapport with the players, have a chat with them, seeing different batsmen, different bowlers on both teams. So Daryl, what did you do in the nets in the lead up to matches, and how should up-and-coming umpires approach training?
Okay, well, I would never go into the nets for a long period of time. Half an hour would be probably the maximum time I'd spend down there. I'd be looking for any bowlers that I hadn't seen before. If there was someone new in the squad who might appear in the game, this is more likely to happen in an ODI than a test match, but the same would happen for any game. If there was someone new, I'd want to see where they bowled from. I'd want to see if they were close to the popping crease, whether they were running down the pitch. Strangely enough, most times in the nets, if you told a bowler that he just bowled a no ball, he'd say, "Oh, don't worry about it. I'll get it right in the game." Bowlers tend to be a little bit lazy, or they did in the past in their training routines, and they always seem to believe that they had control of where their front foot was going to land when match day came. It didn't always happen though. So I used to treat it as a good occasion to catch up, to meet new people, and to prepare for the competition that was about to start, because I wanted to be on a good footing with as many people as possible.
Absolutely. So then we come into game day, Daryl, and all the preparation and training and practice comes into practice on game day. So Daryl, how important is it to back your processes, preparation and training leading into a game on game day?
Well, it's all one package, Jack, really. If you prepare well, if you know your laws and your playing conditions, if you've got a good relationship with your partner and you've got confidence in your partner, confidence in the third umpire, if you know where the fourth umpire is going to be situated if you need them, you just put all those pieces of the package together to get the finished product, and the finished product should be an efficient and hopefully non-controversial day of cricket where you aren't the focus. You want to get through that game without anyone noticing that you're there, apart from your family if they're watching on TV. There's no one specific aspect that you focus more on than another. It's really a combination of doing all the little things correctly, in order, speaking appropriately, and responding to the pressures and the stresses in the right way.
Absolutely. Self-reflection and self-analysis is very important for an umpire, Daryl, to reflect after a day's play or after a game or a series, as you would have done in your career. You need to look to get better and improve as an umpire, because basically that's the job. You want to get better at it.
Sure.
You always want to look to learn and ask advice from other colleagues and peers. So Daryl, how did you go about reflecting after a game or a series? And what are the things umpires should be looking at when they reflect after a game?
Well, when I first started umpiring first-class cricket, there was very little television coverage, so there wouldn't be a replay available for me to look at home or in the umpire's room. There wasn't a TV set there. So it was all a matter of doing the best job you could do. If you got another game, then obviously you'd done well enough to keep people happy. You didn't get much feedback, to be honest. The next appointment was your feedback. If you didn't get another appointment, okay, you offended someone or you got a couple of decisions wrong, obviously. These days, with so much footage available, there's no excuse for not going back and looking at the key moments in the day. And in a day's test match, there might only be 6 deliveries that you really need to go back and focus on. Generally speaking, they're going to be LBW appeals, might be a caught behind, might be a run out, but the whole day can be brought down to just a couple of minutes of replays, focus on what you think you saw, and with the benefit of slow motion, you can see what you were trying to see, what you perhaps didn't see correctly, and you can move forward and just prepare yourself for the battle the next day. Yes, self-reflection is very important. You can't take anything for granted. And of course, for a lot of my career and my international career, we had referees who would be assessing each decision, each delivery. And if we made an error, they would certainly tell us. I've got a feeling that if we got it right, they didn't say anything. There was always someone there. And of course, we'd always confer with the third umpire, because you'd always feel that the third umpire was your closest colleague that wasn't on the field with you. And if you had trust and a good relationship with that person, then he told you did something wrong, well, you'd accept that and try and do it better the next day.
Absolutely. Decision-making is very important in cricket, Daryl. As an umpire, you have to be ready when the fielding team appeals to make your decision. But decision-making doesn't occur when a fielding side appeals. It happens every ball of the match. Daryl, everyone expects umpires to get it all right, but we don't. We're not perfect. But umpires need to develop methods and strategies to move on from bad decisions and focus on the next one. Mm-hmm. And also trusting your gut instinct as well, which you did in 1999-2000 during that test match against India and Australia, where you gave Sachin Tendulkar out. You trusted your instincts and backed yourself to give him out, and you did. So Daryl, what tips would you give to umpires about decision-making, and how important is it to trust your instincts as an umpire when it comes to decision-making? And what are your memories from that day at Adelaide when you gave Sachin out LBW?
Yeah, well, it was quite a remarkable day, actually. I think India was set 395 to win on the in their second innings, and they started that on the fourth afternoon. At 3 for 27, they were in a bit of trouble chasing 395 when Sachin walked in and faced a couple of balls from Glenn McGrath. And when the particular delivery you're talking about came along, I didn't do anything different that I'd do any other occasion. I prepared myself to watch, obviously the front foot, watch where the ball was pitched, and whatever action took place in front of me. And on that occasion, I determined that Sachin had tried to duck under a bouncer. Obviously, the bouncer that didn't bounce very high was hit on the shoulder, and I determined that he was in front of the stumps, and the ball would have gone on and clipped the stumps, not just the bails, but would have hit the top of the stumps. So I didn't do anything remarkable. I just gave him out. It wasn't until he'd taken about 10 steps that I realised the enormity of what had just happened, that this was the Indian captain at the time. India was 4 for 27, chasing 395. I knew that a lot of my friends would tell me, and they later did, that they'd come along to watch Sachin bat, not me umpire. But you do what you need to do. If someone gets hit in front of the stumps and you think the ball's going to hit them and it's pitched in the right place, well, there wasn't really any hesitation in my mind, because it was the only decision I could make. What I didn't discover, by the way, people have told me that's very controversial, but I've never seen it that way. And it wasn't until a couple of years ago I discovered that Richie Benaud was actually off air at the time. He would have been off air preparing for the post-match or post-day's play summary. But when he came back on air the following day, he said something to the effect that, and then there was Tendulkar, and that was controversial. Well, it was made to be controversial, but from all the pictures I've seen, that ball had reached its highest point and was not going to pass over the top of the stumps. I wish I'd known that on the day, but I didn't find out for about 16, 17 years. It made me feel a lot better, but unfortunately Richie had left us by then. Most people agree he was a pretty good judge. He spoke at the right times, and what he said made sense. And I think what he said that on the 5th day of that match, when he made that comment, made sense. And hopefully when I publish my book, you'll see a series of photos that will confirm there was absolutely no doubt that ball was going to hit the stumps.
Absolutely. I have seen a video on YouTube of that, and it did look like it was going to hit the stumps. And in the end, you made the right decision. You backed yourself, which is very important as an umpire. Just trust your instincts. And if you get it right, that's great. If you get it wrong, so be it.
Yeah. You don't get a lot of time to think.
That's right. So Daryl, umpires will have to deal with players who are a bit naughty, a bit, difficult to deal with. Conflict, managing players is very important. Often umpires will come in to diffuse the situation, or, separate the players if they are, exchanging words and that. So Daryl, what advice would you give to umpires in dealing with conflict in a game?
Well, I think the physical conflict certainly happens in the lower levels, the lower levels of cricket. That it's something that I didn't ever need to get involved in, because most of the conflict at my level, my international level, was just a few verbal jibes, a comment here and a comment there. No one ever came to blows. There's never any physical contact. But umpires, I've watched cricket at lower levels. In fact, I watched a game in 2011 between the Staten Island team and the team from Brooklyn. I think they might have been called the Brooklyn Lions. Most of them had come from Jamaica and were living in New York. And I felt quite embarrassed watching the game, because every batsman that was given out or got out gave the umpire a piece of advice as he left. And they weren't very polite. It wasn't the sport that I knew, because I'd never had to deal with that sort of verbal aggression in the face of the umpire. I mean, no one ever spoke to me rudely like that. I suppose it was partly the fact that baseball has a certain aspect of it, or an element of it, that it almost requires people to be aggressive. People people seem to enjoy, the managers seem to enjoy giving the umpires a difficult time, and they're often kicked out of the game. Well, that's not going to happen in cricket, but maybe that was the overriding influence in Staten Island on that particular day. By the way, Staten Island Cricket Club was formed in 1872, which was 5 years before the first test was ever played. So there has been cricket in some interesting parts of the world for a long, long time. And I can proudly say I'm a member of the Staten Island Cricket Club.
Absolutely. Daryl, what advice would you give to any young umpire starting out?
Play for as long as you can. Play the game for as long as you can. Get to know the game, the ins and outs, know what it feels like to get a bad decision, know what it feels like to make a few runs, take a catch and take wickets. Just, you play for the love of the game. If at the same time you can delve into the umpiring area, go for it, which is basically what I did. Those carnivals I umpired in as a 17, 18-year-old, I couldn't have played in them. I'd been in them. I was too old. I had some time on my hands. I wanted to put my foot in the water and just see if I could enjoy it, and I did. I loved it. So volunteer, umpire some junior games, umpire the kids, where there are less sheep stations involved. Just take any opportunity to get out there and see if your judgment is as good as it needs to be to conduct a game harmoniously, correctly and efficiently. Make sure everyone's having a great time.
Yeah, absolutely.
Go for it.
Sorry?
Go for it.
Yeah, that's right. Go for it. I play an umpire myself where I'm from in the country, and I enjoy it. If I'm not playing one week, I can go and umpire a game and learn about the craft and get better at it.
Yep, exactly. That's what it's all about. You learn something for every game.
Exactly right. So, Daryl, for our next topic, we're going to be talking about the state of international umpiring and discuss other things within international umpiring as well. But let's talk about the state of international umpiring first. Daryl, what's your take on how the game is being umpired today, and what changes would you make to how the game is umpired?
Well, I think I touched on that earlier when we were talking about that last series, Australia-India, where it was umpired by the Australians, and obviously a series in England umpired by the English. It seems to be ticking along pretty well. The standard of umpiring seems to be extremely high. I think the umpires are far more skilled than we were 10 years ago and 20 years ago when I was umpiring. Their knowledge is generally very, very good. Their efficiency at making decisions is great. They've got the third umpire to back them up to resolve any issues. It seems to me that the state of umpiring at the highest levels in pretty good hands. I enjoy watching a little bit of international cricket, but I certainly haven't been involved internationally for 10 years. So these are the ramblings of someone that's been out of the system and just viewing it from afar. But I like what I see, and I enjoy watching good quality cricket and good quality umpiring.
Absolutely. Do some people get in touch with you to talk umpiring from the international panel or not?
No, generally speaking, umpires keep to themselves. They don't want to talk to someone that has been. It's 10 years since I umpired a test match, so my way of thinking is old-fashioned, and what these guys are doing is very impressive today. I think if you watch that last series with Australia-India, the umpiring was terrific. We had Paul Wilson coming through umpiring a couple of test matches towards the end of that series, or maybe the third and fourth test. He did a great job for someone that's only umpired maybe 4 or 5. I think he might have only umpired 4 test matches, but he's an umpire that's coming through the system and looking really sharp and positive and effective, ticking all the right boxes. So, I think the state of umpiring is pretty good.
Yeah. Daryl, as you said, umpiring's changed dramatically since you retired in 2011, and it's changed over the years, actually. The techniques have changed. I remember umpires used to crouch down really low in the real old days, watching the bowler's feet through the popping crease. That was for the back foot law, which is no longer in cricket anymore. That was changed in 1963 to the front foot law, which we have to this present day. Umpires used to lunge forward in their stance when they were standing upright. They used to go forward like that. as well. But umpires tend to stand up straight, keep still, and don't move their head as much, and as they did back in the old days. The uniforms have changed as well. I remember umpires used to wear ties and button-up shirts, Daryl. Not
Yes,
great
we
on a
did.
hot day, I'm guessing.
No, it wasn't, especially in the subcontinent.
Yeah.
It was crazy.
Yeah, that's the only sport in the world that has umpires wearing ties and button-up shirts, and they used to wear white trench coats. I'm sure you have a collection of your uniforms over the years, Daryl.
I've dumped most of that rubbish.
I thought you would have kept them.
Only if I want to sell ice creams at a football match would I wear a jacket like that.
No, I say bring back the trench coats. They look pretty cool. Bring back, that's what they used to wear back in the day. ICC, bring it back.
Keep it modern, stay modern.
Yeah. And umpires have technology to assist them in decision making, and the DRS has come in as well. Daryl, what has been the biggest change in umpiring from when you umpired to the modern day umpires? And would you prefer to umpire today or in your era?
Well, I still look back and enjoy the fact that pre-DRS, when we made a decision, the players had to accept that decision. And on many occasions they were wrong, the decisions that is. But the game was played in the right spirit. People begrudgingly accepted the decision, moved on. Life carried on. With the DRS coming in, it means that more decisions will be accurately resolved. But I think it takes a little bit away from the importance of the umpire or the satisfaction that an umpire can get now. I don't think I'd like to stand out there and have a number of decisions reviewed and overturned in a day. I had that experience once in I think it might have been a T20 or some competition. I didn't enjoy that. So I like cricket the old-fashioned way, but I'm quite happy in the modern times the way the game's gone. I'm just glad that I came from the old era when out was out and not out was not out.
Absolutely. It's where you respected the umpire's decision. That was final, either good or bad.
Yeah, exactly.
That's right. Daryl, we've seen over the last few years more female umpires come through the system and take up the profession in a male-dominated profession, really, which umpiring is. And that's great to see. Many women have gone on to umpire women's internationals, World Cups, T20 World Cups in the women's game, and an opportunity to officiate in men's games every now and again. We also see more and more umpires to the international panel of ICC development umpires. So the ICC promoting women officials, which is brilliant to see, and long may that continue. In Australia, we have two females on that panel, Claire Poldersack and Eloise Sheridan, who's from South Australia, actually. Claire Poldersack, she's umpired many international matches in the women's game and did a few men's as well. Last summer at the SCG, she became the first female to officiate in a men's test, being fourth umpire in that test match, which was a proud occasion. And Eloise Sheridan, who's from South Australia, she's really umpired well in domestic cricket here in Australia. She's become the first South Australian female to be appointed to a Cricket Australia umpiring panel, which is great. She's joined Cricket Australia's supplementary umpiring panel, and she's being called up to the Australia and India Women's Series happening at the moment up there in Queensland. And we wish her all the best because she will be making her international debut in that series. So all the best to her. So Claire and Eloise are leading the way for female umpires and officials within the game of cricket here in Australia, but all over the world. Daryl, how do you see the future of female umpires in cricket? And do you see a female umpire umpiring a men's test match in the near future?
I don't know about the near future, but I can see female umpires developing further and further and moving up the ladder, so to speak. I can see women being involved in the national panel eventually when their performance is warranted. There's another young lady who umpires here in Adelaide, Mary Waldron, who is actually from Ireland. And a couple of years ago, I went out to a club match here in Adelaide. It was the first time that a men's club match, Tea Tree Gully was playing at home out at Pertaringa, and it was umpired by two women. And that was a first. So yeah, it was nice to be there on that historical day. So yeah, the women are certainly not taking over, but they're moving into the ranks, and it's great to see the recruiting happening. And yeah, the more the merrier. It doesn't matter who's making the decision. The most important thing is whether it's out or not, and whether it's correct or not. So yeah, go for it, ladies. Please join the club.
Absolutely, and it's great that we're seeing women umpires eventually go into international ranks and hopefully higher honours. So long may that continue, and great work by the ICC and obviously home boards around the world promoting women officials, which is brilliant to see.
Exactly.
Now, Daryl, many people don't know what international umpires actually do behind the scenes. Many people don't know what the third umpire, fourth umpire, or match referee does. They know what the on-field umpires do, but they don't know what those other umpires and the match referee do. So, Daryl, give us a bit of a snapshot of what the third umpire, fourth umpire, and match referee do within a game of cricket.
Okay, well, I think most people are pretty au fait with the third umpire. They know that third umpire is sitting there and responding to reviews, responding to run-outs, responding to any request that the umpires on the field may ask of him. So, or her. The third umpire's got access to all the statistics that are happening, got access to replays, got access to seeing the bowler's front foot land on the popping crease. So the third umpire is actually becoming quite an important person in the game. Still, the two on field are doing the bulk of the work, and that third umpire is there for, I guess, referrals. If anything is uncertain on the field, that's where the third umpire comes in. So the third umpire's got to be sitting in front of the screen, for every delivery and more, keeping the on-field umpires up to date. They might be passing on a weather report that's come through. They might have one of their screens with the radar showing that there's weather approaching. So, the third umpire is there to keep feeding as much into the on-field umpires as they can possibly digest, and also, resolve the difficult situations when they're referred to. The fourth umpire has a less onerous task. The fourth umpire is usually located on the ground, usually between the two playing boxes, where the two competing teams may have their players. It depends on whether it's a test or if it's a T20 or whatever it is. The fourth umpire is available to tidy up lots of loose ends, let's put it that way. If the boundary rope's dislodged and needs to be replaced, fourth umpire will jump out and put that back into order. If replacement ball's required, fourth umpire will have those available to run out to the two umpires in the middle. Really dealing with drinks for the umpires, all the little odds and ends that you take for granted. Someone's got to do them, and it's usually the fourth umpire. It's a good situation. It's a good learning curve. It's a good chance for the fourth umpire to be there, hear the conversation going on between the umpires, see how the best umpires at that level operate, and pick up any tips that appeal to them that they can use in their game. So it's usually more of a development position than one that people crave to be appointed as a fourth umpire. You really want to be appointed on the field or in the box. They're the key jobs. Now, the referee's got an interesting role. I did that for 8 years for Cricket Australia, where I would conduct the toss. I'd spend time with the umpires before the game, during the breaks and after the game. As a referee, you've got to assess the umpire's performance. That involves assessing any decisions that they make. And I'm thinking that in a Sheffield Shield match going for 4 days, that might involve very close scrutiny of maybe 60, 70 deliveries. All the appeals are recorded, batsman, the bowler, the outcome, what the replay showed, whether it was right or wrong. There are a number of statistics to be retained by the referee, and all the paperwork regarding, tidying up the match. Over rates, of course, we've already mentioned. Any reporting that takes place, if anyone breaches the code of conduct, it's the referee who deals with that person and determines the sanction if one's applied. So the referee has a lot of work to do after the game, especially because those reports need to be written and uploaded, provided for the governing body and anyone else who's interested. so that that game can be fully resolved. There'll be a report on the state of the ground, whether it was up to scratch, the change rooms, the pitch, all the facilities, car parking, food, cleanliness, all those areas that you take for granted. They're all covered in a report submitted by the referee. So, yeah, it's quite a lengthy job. But I think the key issue for the referee is to resolve any issues that come, dissent, whatever, if it's reported, and also to assess the umpires, because we all need assessment, and the umpires like to be provided with that feedback initially on the day of play. Most umpires like to hear how they've gone, and then within a day that report is uploaded onto the system, and the umpire can see precisely how they've been assessed. So it's quite transparent, and everyone knows what they're getting and what's been said about them.
Absolutely.
So they're the jobs.
Yeah. So I hope everyone's got a bit of an idea of what the third and fourth and match referee do during a match in international cricket.
Yeah, good fun.
Yeah, absolutely. Daryl, mental health has become a big problem in cricket among players, but it has become a big problem in society as well. Daryl, umpiring being a high-pressure job, with that, it comes with a lot of pressure from the media when incorrect decisions happen within a match, or you're performing badly and poorly over a long period of time. I was reading Ian Gould's book, and Daryl, you would have umpired a lot of games with Gunner, which was Ian Gould's nickname, and you umpired your last test match with him in 2011. He mentioned in his book he was burnt out, suffered a mental breakdown. He said in his book, in the end, 10 years of constant matches, meetings, and travel wore me down. He went on to say, I know for sure that some of my colleagues have experienced similar issues, but like me, they cover it up for the main reason that it's a great life and you are loath to give it up. He then said, do the ICC have a duty of care to provide more pastoral care for umpires and referees? Perhaps, maybe a better idea is to have people around who can recognise the signs. Now, we mentioned before that, that the ICC may be considering having home and away umpires to cut down travel, and that could improve umpires and match referees' mental health going forward in the near future. Daryl, how much of a toll did international umpiring took on you, and did some of your colleagues express concerns for their mental health and well-being?
I don't believe anyone did in my time. My era was really a little bit of overlap with Ian Gould, but my era was really basically from the early 90s until 2010, 11. What sort of toll did it have? I'm still seeing a therapist. No, I'm joking. To be honest, I don't know what sort of a toll it had. There were highs and lows. I think maybe there's a bit of different terminology these days. People seem to be struggling in many different ways. They just have different labels for it these days. I mean, I must admit, there were times when I was quite depressed with the way things were going, and if you're away from home and that happens, it can be very difficult, very testing, especially if you think the world's against you or the media's jumping on your back and you keep reading your name in the paper and you don't want to see it. Look, it's up to each individual, isn't it? You can't cover everybody. I certainly didn't know at the time that Ian was struggling in any way. Perhaps his struggles came soon after. Perhaps his struggle came when I departed from the scene. Maybe I was keeping him afloat, and as soon as I left, he went downhill. I don't really know. I haven't spoken to Ian since then. He was an outstanding umpire, great personality, really bubbly fella, and he would be the last one that anyone from the outside would think was having any problems because of his outgoing nature and his humour and his love of life. He was the sort of guy you'd want to be with if you're off the field, because something would be happening. There'd be a joke, a laugh, there'd be a bit of action. So yes, I was disappointed to hear that he had tough times, but then I reflected and thought, well, I guess we've all been through those moments ourselves. They are easier to cope with, I think, when you're in your home country. I did leave Australia 80 times to go and umpire overseas, so there were a lot of opportunities to get the highs and the lows. So be it. That's life. You take what comes, and you respond in the best way that you possibly can.
Absolutely. Did the ICC ever mention that to you at all, or any of the umpires about that, or support available?
I don't believe that was ever discussed in my time. I think it's more of the last decade situation. No, people had either had poor form, weren't umpiring well, or they were umpiring well. We didn't really talk about those issues. Perhaps we should have. We should have been checking to see if everyone's okay, but it wasn't something we did.
Yeah. Obviously, you were a match referee with Cricket Australia. Cricket Australia focusing on that with match officials themselves?
Oh yes, there's certainly been a lot more focus as we've all become educated about about life and about personal issues and mental issues. These are things we just didn't discuss in the old days, but in the last decade, it's become much more prevalent, much more common for someone to be having difficulties, and the boards, Australian Cricket Board, Cricket Australia, will take action when someone needs help. That's the good thing. We are now looking out for each other. We are concerned about people's state of mind. And in the old days, I guess it just had a different label.
Yeah, absolutely. Obviously, different generation, different era, different times, really. Now it's becoming more open in this modern era with umpires and players. Yep. If this has raised any concerns for your mental health, do get in touch with many of the mental health organisations that can help you. We have also done some other episodes on the podcast about mental health, so check them out, please do. Those videos have the links to all the mental health organisations for you to get in touch. So please watch them, and if you're struggling, seek some help. It's great to talk to someone. Now, Daryl, we see more past players becoming international umpires, and they come from first class and international backgrounds. We see that more and more. Nearly all the current members of the elite panel have played some sort of first class or international cricket. I think the only one who hasn't is Joel Wilson from the West Indies. I think he's the only one who hasn't played first class or international cricket. Daryl, we don't see your type of umpire coming through the system anymore. Someone who hasn't played first class or international cricket, just a pure umpire and a pure specialist. So Daryl, tell us, how does the pathway differ for past players compared to the pathway for regular umpires at international level? And why aren't we seeing your type of umpire who hasn't played first class or international cricket being selected on the elite panel?
Good question. I always consider myself as a garden variety type umpire. I just came through the system because, it's something I chose to do. I had a passion for it. I wanted to test it out. I tried it out. I loved it. I enjoyed doing it. And, I was recognised as being reasonably successful and promoted. I know in Australia we've had a system of project umpire contracts where past players have been encouraged to head down the umpiring pathway. Paul Wilson, I believe, was on that pathway once upon a time. Rod Tucker was probably on it at some stage. I don't know that, to be honest, I'm quite ignorant about who's doing what in this day and age. I've really been out of touch for some time now. But I don't know why it would be exclusive to past players. It doesn't really, I don't believe a past player has a huge advantage over a non-past first-class player when the ball hits the pads. I think there are certain skills you need, and you make your judgment according to your experience, what you see, what you hear, and sometimes it baffles me why there aren't more non-players coming through the system. Yeah,
absolutely. Is it just because they want to go with past players because of that reasoning, the ICC, or they just think, well, they're good umpires, we select them to be a part of the various panels?
Well, it's an interesting discussion point. When you look at the elite panel of umpires, those umpires have been selected because they've been extremely good at what they do, and that's umpiring, right? They've umpired, they've worked their way up through the pathway, whatever that might be, and they've been rewarded by selection on the panel because of their umpiring. But when you look at the international panel of referees, none of them have been promoted to that position because they've been outstanding in their field of refereeing. because they haven't done any refereeing. They've only been promoted to that position because they belong to the past players club. I can't think of any referee that had any experience as a referee before he was refereeing an international match. I mean, that's not a bad way to start, is it?
Yeah.
So there does seem to be a little bit of inequity in the system where an umpire needs to prove himself as an umpire before he can reach the pinnacle, whereas a referee really only needs to have played a couple of test matches. It's a good discussion point. I've never come up with a
it is, but the match referee role has not been in cricket for that long.
Oh, we had referees in the 90s.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It hasn't been in for a long period of time. It's only come in a little while, as you said, in the 90s, because it was just basically you had the umpires and that was it, no match referee. Basically, all the umpires did all the work. Now, the match referee does all the paperwork and all that other stuff that goes with it.
It's true.
Daryl, with technology coming into the game more and more, assisting umpires more than ever, back in your day, you didn't really have much technology. I think in the 90s, third umpire came in. Correct me if I'm wrong. Came in to replays for stumpings and runouts, etc. We now see the ICC using technology for front foot no balls and correcting incorrect short run calls now. So, Daryl, do you think that the balance between technology and human element is just about right? Or do you think the balance is too much in favour of technology and taken away that human element from the umpires?
Well, whatever I think is not going to change anyone's decision on any moves that have been made. I think we're just moving towards more and more technology taking over the role. Whether it's a good thing or a bad thing, I don't know. I wouldn't like to think that the umpire was really only standing out there to hold someone's cap and jumper and not being involved in the decision-making process and playing a role in that great game we love. You know, where supposedly we should have respect for, you know, the opponents and the game and all the participants, including the umpires. So tough question. I'm going to leave that to you to make your final decision.
Yeah, I think, well, because you've gone up through the system without that, and you build up those skills. Whereas you go to international cricket, you become, I don't know, sort of lazy and not really focusing on that anymore. Because basically, what the ICC are telling the officials now is basically focus at the business end, which is the batsman. Don't worry about the front foot. Focus on getting the decision right.
Just changing the job. You're right. Yes. You talked about the introduction of the third umpire. In my very first one-day international that was played at the WACA in January 94, I'd never had access to a third umpire before. I'd made my decisions in Shield games and in Mercantile Cup games and McDonald's Cup games and whatever other format there was. I'd made my decisions without ever having a third umpire. So to be umpiring my first one-day international, it wasn't something that I was standing out there thinking, Daryl, remember you've got a third umpire. So I did make a tight call early in the game, and I did forget that I had the third umpire available. And the player that I gave out, the New Zealand wicketkeeper, I think it was Tony Blaine, did tell me as he got up off the ground after being given out, run out, he did remind me that I should have used the technology. And perhaps I should have. But anyway, the game moved on, and most other times I remembered that I had a third umpire available, and I used them only when necessary. I didn't use them on every occasion. I prefer umpires to use their skills, and I think what you were alluding to before was that perhaps umpires have been a little bit de-skilled by the introduction of so much technology. There are tasks now that they just don't have to perform, which is a little bit sad, but that's a progression of the game. That's determined by the governing body, and that's the ICC. And that's what's happening.
Obviously, because every time it's a stumping or a run out, umpires are not trusting their instincts. They're just going upstairs because they get criticised if they don't want to go. If they don't go upstairs, then they get criticised.
Yeah. But we all like to see an umpire make a decision.
At the end of the day, yes. And that's what
You know,
the game's about, making decisions.
When someone's out by 1.5 meters, people will say, what was he looking at? You know, why did he use the third umpire? Well, you know, perhaps it's become a bit of a crutch and it's used too much.
Yeah. So, Daryl, I thought to end this discussion today, let's hear some funny stories from your umpiring days. Now, Daryl, I'm sure you have plenty of funny stories to tell, and it will create lots of episodes for the podcast. When researching for our discussion today, I came across 2 funny incidences involving you, and I would love to hear what happened in those 2 funny incidences. The first one, Daryl, was you chasing a stray dog that ran onto the field during the second test between Sri Lanka and New Zealand in Gandhi. Can you tell us what happened there?
Well, precisely that, a stray dog. If you've ever been to the subcontinent and watched cricket, you'll know that there's a stray dog on the field in every match on every day. I don't think it's the same dog that's transported from ground to ground, but you can guarantee at some stage there'll be a dog on the ground. And on this occasion, that particular dog left a message on the ground right at square leg where I was due to stand. So I was simply trying to shuffle that dog away, and someone snapped a great photo. It appeared on the front page of the local paper the next day in Colombo. And I think the caption said, even the street dogs didn't like Umpire Harper. So yes, I did enjoy that moment. I did enjoy that photo, and I have gone with the line that every dog has his day on many occasions in my life since that photo was taken. Yeah, I love that photo.
Yeah. The second one involves you umpiring an ODI between Australia and England at the SCG in 2010-11. It was the 6th ODI out of the series, which involved 7 games, I should say, in that series. It was the 6th ODI. You were umpiring the match with Murray Erasmus, and Michael Clarke wanted to call for a batting power play. Australia were chasing 333 to win, set by England. Australia chased down the runs to win by 2 wickets. Now, Michael Clarke wanted the batting power play. Your partner, Murray Erasmus, said, no, you can't call for it. Maybe he didn't do it in time or something. And then Murray Erasmus said, we've been in position for more than a minute. And then Clarke said something, and Murray said, because that's the rule. That's my best South African accent there, Murray Erasmus.
Very good.
Then the next server from your end, Daryl, Clarke called for the batting power play again. Then Andrew Strauss set the field for a batting power play. He had the men out, ready for the power play. He then walks over to Murray Erasmus at square leg. And then he talks to you, Daryl, at your end. Then you said to Strauss, there's no power play. Then over the stump mics, you said, it's not on. It's not on if it's not on. Then Clarke said something to you, Daryl, said, Daryl, everyone wants us to take it. And you said, shall we do a vote? And then we got ready to start the over. Then you said over the stump mics, no power play. Never has been. So Daryl, tell us what happened on that night at the SCG, and did Australia get the batting power play?
That's a darn good question, Jack, and I've really got to be honest and say I don't remember that happening. I do remember another incident from I think it was the same night, where Kevin Peterson was bowling to Cameron White, and Cameron White slashed Kevin Peterson bowling as a off spinners, and Cameron White slashed at a ball outside the off stump that Matt Pryor actually dropped. I didn't think White had hit the ball. It went through to the keeper, he dropped it, and Kevin Peterson carried on like a pork chop, as if he'd just missed out on a wicket because the ball had been dropped. I was reasonably confident that it hadn't been touched. A little bit at the end of the over, Kevin Peterson called out to me. He was standing near Cameron. He said, Daryl, he smashed that one, didn't he? And I thought to myself, well, here's a moment where I could get myself into trouble if I say that he hit it and he didn't, or if I say that he didn't and he did. I could be proven wrong. So I took the sensible path and simply replied to Kevin, oh, come on, Kevin, I'm not going to play childish games with you. And I hit it off to square leg. So it wasn't resolved as far as Kevin was concerned. The next over, in a similar moment, a slash at the ball outside the off stump, no contact, big appeal from Kevin Peterson, not out from me. He immediately went to Andrew Strauss, telling Andrew, he smashed that one. You've got to review the decision. You've got to review the decision. So Andrew reluctantly reviewed it. It came back. no contact, bat on ball, not out, decision stands. As Kevin walked back past me, I was hoping that he'd look at me. I wanted to just give him a nice, gentle, sweet smile as he walked past, just to confirm that I'd been right and he'd been wrong. And he wouldn't look. He steamed past, looking superior and as if I didn't even exist in the world. He got back to his bowling mark and I decided to have the last word, which I usually do and did in those days. I put my hand out, I stopped him from bowling, I turned around, I walked right back. I got quite close to him and I said to him, "Hey, Kevin," apparently he didn't hit that one. And I turned around and walked back and got in my position and the over was completed. Several people from different parts of the world told me that their lip reading skills were very good. And Kevin said a very, very bad word behind my back as I walked back into my position. But that's of no concern to me. I got the last word in. He didn't hit the ball. My decision was confirmed as correct. And Kevin's actually a player I admire greatly. I always loved umpiring him because something would always happen. There was always some excitement around. He's just a larger-than-life character. So if ever I did a Kevin Peterson game, that was a highlight. And if I could get under his skin and annoy him on that occasion, that's what I was trying to do.
Absolutely.
I'm out there to enjoy myself.
Yeah, that's right. So any other funny stories? We just touched on two there, but any other funny stories that you would like to share during your career that stood out for you?
Well, I hope this one's still politically correct. It might be a good one for me to finish on, Jack. I was umpiring my second ODI, so it was around about 1995, 96. I waited about almost 2 years between my first and my second, and it was on Adelaide Oval. It was Pakistan playing the West Indies. Roger Harper was batting. At one stage, a wicket fell at the far end, at the scoreboard end. We were at the Torrens end. And Roger was standing there waiting for the new batsman to arrive. And I looked up at the scoreboard and there was his name in the batting slot, Harper. And there was my name in the bottom right-hand corner in the umpiring slot, Harper, Harper, Harper. I said to Roger, "Hey, Roger, 2 Harpers in this game, 2 Harpers on the scoreboard. That's pretty unusual." Roger just nodded. I still hadn't heard him speak at this stage. He's a very quiet guy. He just nodded in agreement. And just as my partner arrived from square leg, it was a fellow by the name of Terry Prue from Perth, Western Australia, great umpire, umpired a number of tests as well as ODIs. Just as he arrived, I thought I'd take the conversation a step further. And I said, "Hey, Roger, do you reckon we might be related?" Now, Roger comes from Guyana and he's about 6'5", and he's an athlete. I come from Adelaide, South Australia. I'd never made the 6 foot mark. I'm a little bit overweight. There really wasn't a great chance that we were going to be related. But, you never know in this world who's related to who. Roger thought about it for a moment and he said in a beautiful, deep voice, suitable for a radio announcer, he said, "Maybe if you go way, way back." And from that moment in time, wherever I saw Roger around the world, because he continued to play, and he also, in my international umpiring career, he was often the coach of Kenya in World Cups, etc. Saw him in different parts of the world, and he would always greet me. He would start it would be a high five, a very high five, because he's a big guy, and he would say to me, "G'day, cuz," short for cousin. So that's how I broke the ice with Roger Harper, and it went off well. It didn't always work that way. I mean, not everyone appreciated my sense of humour, but we had a relationship that was built on a funny start, but he's the sort of bloke that would stop and have a chat wherever I saw him. Very friendly, warm man. Someone that I greatly admired, and I sort of count as a friend, even if we aren't related. I don't know, but that's Roger from Guyana.
Do you keep
Enjoyed
in touch
that
with
moment
him to this day, or?
No, I haven't seen Roger for years, and no, I don't hassle anyone on the internet. So if I see him, I'll see him. I might see him at a test at Adelaide Oval one day. I don't know. I'd love to have a chat and have a drink and talk about the old times, because yes, he was part of an incredible era when he was playing for the West Indies.
Absolutely. Well, Daryl, thank you so much for joining me today. I really loved our discussion, talking about your career. I've enjoyed it immensely. I've learned a lot about umpiring as well, and I hope everyone has as well if they want to become an umpire as well. It's just been very fascinating talking about your journey in cricket, and thank you so much for joining me today. I really appreciate it.
It's been my pleasure, Jack. I umpired for 28 years and I refereed domestically for another 8 or 9 years. My life's been in cricket. Cricket's in my blood. I love it. And I enjoy talking about it. Not so much the decisions, whether they're right or wrong, but just, the chance to meet people and to see the best players up close and personal, see them performing at the highest level was, I always thought that was a treat that I didn't necessarily deserve, but I enjoyed every minute up there. So, encouragement to anyone that wants to take it on. You'll never know until you give it a try. And some people will be suited to it, others won't. I've often said that if you want to exceed at something, if you want to do really well at something, select an area that not many people want to do. And umpiring cricket is one of those. People aren't clambering over each other to try and get to umpire their first game. But in hindsight, I'm really glad that I took the challenge on, and I've loved every minute and enjoyed the chance to talk to you today. Thanks, Jack.
Thank you, Daryl. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much. It's one of my favorite chats that I've done thus far on the podcast, and I will enjoy it forever for a long time, just to have the opportunity to speak to you.
Only one of your favourites? It's not up there?
It's probably, in a cricket sense, probably the best talk that I've done.
Thanks, mate. No, my pleasure.
Thank you, Daryl. And to those watching, thank you for watching. Hope you enjoyed it. Keep safe and bye for now. Hi, everyone. Hope you enjoyed my cricket discussion with former ICC Elite International umpire Daryl Harper. Be sure to subscribe and click the bell to get the latest episodes of the podcast, and like and share our Facebook page, and follow us on Twitter and on Instagram. Until next time, keep safe and bye for now.